starting off, I wanted just a lighthearted moment. Uh, we had uh, a kerfuffle villainy and I. Um, the context is Jonesy is super out of position over here, and are you guys getting background noise by the way?
Nope.
Cool. Uh, Jonesy's super out of position. His bomb needs to come over here, or we die because all the seeds are going to be in the wrong spot. Um, so we, I'm gonna rescue him, but when re-clicking on the ground, I click on villainy and then yoink him out of the air, which I didn't know was a thing you could do, but is that we died a flare bomb. So I just wanted to. That was a fun moment before we get into the serious stuff. So all right, let's dive in. Couple of different things to hit today. First, kind of right out the gate, is avoidable damage, and this is gonna only include star fragments, which are like the blue swirlies on the ground, and the cleave damage from mass entanglement, right? So being too close to a bunch of people, right? So you'll notice there's a pretty big spread between our bottom end and top end in terms of total damage taken here. Um, there's a lot of damage that goes out, and we'll kind of talk about the sources of that stuff as we're rolling through. But um, the root damage, especially, is a big contributor to this. You'll look like there's a big difference here between like Boa and Cammy, who were primarily getting cleaved by roots, versus say like Tony or Osk, who are primarily getting hit by star fragments. I think there was another star fragmenter down here, but much lower on the whole. So we just need to focus on our feet, which I know is not going to be news to people, but over the course of the night, even factoring in a 10-minute break, we're still taking like a pretty significant amount of damage per second as a result of all of that avoidable damage. So zooming in on that and looking to cut it down is going to be good. The how of that this isn't just a get good moment. There's a method to the madness here. So for context, I'm going to show a couple examples from P1, P2, and P3. This is a P1 pull. You can see because of our markers here. It's all from the same pull, but you can just see kind of different positioning. So this is right as the roots are going out. So this is the first root set where Demon Hunters and Luke are going to be getting bombs. So it makes sense that they're out here, right? But if we look at kind of the rest of the raid, you'll see that there's like a big ol' hole over here, and then pretty much everyone is concentrated on this quarter of the boss. One trend that you'll see both here and across some of the other examples that we'll look at is where possible, after we've dodged fire beams, melee stepping to the inside of the room, because all your ranged are out here getting dispelled, and they're going to be running back into the boss to be in the stack. Like I'm running in here, Cammy's running in here, Codex is running in here, Kez is going to self-break, so she's not going to run in, right? But you're going to have a bunch of ranged moving in towards the boss this way, and you're going to end up with just naturally your range DPS kind of congregating towards the outside of the room. One thing that we can do to kind of cut down on that overall cleave damage is just have our melee that are here swing wide. I know melee healers, that's not really an option because you have to be in range to dispel this guy way out here. So that's not as attainable. But I think our melee DPS especially, swinging to the side of the boss where we don't have ranged coming in from dispels is going to be really, really big. Not just here, but there's a couple other times. So what that would look like in this particular example, and I'm picking on Schwab and Nick here, but it's not always Schwab and Nick, just to be abundantly clear, but would just be to have Schwab and Nick wrap around the boss. The big part of why melee are over here to begin with is they were looking out for fire coming from the far side of the room, right? Because there's fire that comes from here, fire that comes from here, so you're dodging fire from this side. Once you've dodged your fire, just swing around Tindral. So that your butt is on the inside of the room. You don't have to be as far out as Zarnik or as far out as Eland, but just swing on over. Okay. Same thing. This is a P2 example, right? So same idea. Dispels are out here. So same thing, you're going to have ranged running in. Flipping our melee DPS around and having them on this side of the boss, again, towards the middle of the room, is going to be a big difference maker from a route positioning standpoint. From a POV perspective, if I grab this, I can show you. We don't need this anymore. So this is at 243. So at 243, right? What this looks like is, and I'm just going to kind of let this run. What this looks like is your ranged are stacking in. You're always going to have ranged coming in, even if you don't get a bomb, because what's happening here is ranged are pre-positioning out so that they can be in a good spot for quick dispel enablement, right? So even if I don't get a bomb here, I'm still going to be coming in and standing on this side of the boss. So all of these DPS, all of these melee, if you guys swing around, will still be in a nice clump around the boss, but the ranged who are either coming in after a dispel or are coming in because they didn't get a bomb are going to have somewhere to stand with roots, which are coming out now, which isn't going to cause a ton of cleave. If you look at where these roots are, so I'm just going to pause it right here. I know there's a lot of shit on the screen, but we have a pretty big concentration on this side of the boss. Tindral's over here. There's like 2 people on this side of Tindral. If I flip the script here, again, at the same moment, and we look at Holy's POV, you can see the same thing kind of from a different angle. The whole raid is this way. Here's the boss. There's 0 people on this side. So if we move our clump over, we can stay grouped by flipping the melee around. The ranged can get closer in, and we can still have bombs hitting a critical mass, but we'll kind of have 2 different clumps as opposed to 1 giga clump where everyone's taking a ton of cleave damage. So it's minor optimization, right? But the same thing is true in P2 as in P1. If we go a little further, this changes. So we'll talk about that in a second. So this is at 315. So this is just before our weird dispels, right? So these are the vines that we're AoEing down. And then we need our, under our own power. And then we need our healers out here to do the first of the U-shaped dispel. Dispel 2 comes over here. And then we have dispels 3 and 4. What this looks like, again, in live time is we're here. We're getting a germination. Everyone catches a seed, and then we all stack in, right? You see our healers are out here baiting. Notably, on this one, our range are going to be cheated. So this one is the exception to that rule. The set where we have 1, 2 right, 3, 4 left. In this instance, ranged are going to be cheating towards the side that they're more likely to get dispel assigned for, right? So warlocks, evokers, shamans are all going to be cheating towards dispel 2. Hunters, mages, and those guys are all going to be cheating towards dispels 3 and 4. So if melee could be either directly in front of or directly behind the boss in a loose clump, it's going to give our ranged room to pre-position without, again, causing undue cleave damage. So if we look at kind of how we're actually arrayed in this moment, we're the same thing. We have a huge concentration of people back towards the old fire right over here, right? And then we have Zarnik kind of out doing his thing. But we have Warlock, Warlock. These people are going to be the people receiving freedoms. I think in this case, Cammy gets the bomb, if I'm not mistaken. But then we have Hunters and Mages. Ideally, Bid would be on this side of the boss, more likely to get Dispel 3 or 4. So we, like, ranged have some changes to make here. This melee group is pretty good. But if we could have some of you guys likely shift to the front, so like Demon Hunters and Warriors in the back, everyone else at the front, or like some proportion, potentially more people in the back because you have the tanks up here as well, we'll again be able to reduce that cleave damage and enable ourselves to pre-position well for those bombs. And we'll talk a little bit more about bomb pre-positioning for the ranged, but this is going to be an easy way. Again, it's not something that you need to dedicate your whole brain power to, but melee, cheat towards the inside of the room generally, except for this one set where you want to be just not to the sides of the boss. Okay? And again, that'll just help bring down our total mass entanglement damage. Because again, it adds up over the course of the fight. These aren't our scariest moments necessarily, but what's happening right now is people are taking a lot of damage from roots, they're panicking, and they're pressing a defensive cooldown. We'll talk about our scary damage moments, but we want to have those defensive cooldowns for those scary overlaps. We don't want to necessarily have to be burning them because we overstacked for a root set. Okay. Last example. This is a P3 example. So this, for context, we're coming out. We get a flare, but the first flare bomb comes out. We're stacking in. These are our locked in root positions. Our movement is a little bit chaotic still in P3, but you'll note that this is a flare bomb set, so we want to be grouped on the boss, and there's truly nobody towards the outside of the room, or towards the inside of the room. Everyone is like pre-moving over to Skull. Our flare bomb people are out getting flare bombs, but the whole raid pre-moves, which we don't need to do. And we'll talk a little bit more about P3 positioning, but whenever we see like a semicircle around the boss, we're asking to take a ton more damage than we need to in this moment. So it's just one way. It's one thing that we can optimize. One weird thing I did see on this set is people are breaking. There's nothing else happening during this root set. Like, yes, the boss will create a fire thing, but this is, again, unique to this pull. We shouldn't be breaking any roots on this root set. We don't need to spawn treants. Spawning treants here is just going to increase our total damage done. Like, Tony did not need to break here. Jonesy did not need to break here. So I know we talked about it a little bit in our like offline VOD review, but unless you need to get out of fire right now, or you're on a set where we know you need to break, don't break your roots. You just don't have to do it. It's going to cause us to take more damage overall. Okay. P2. So P2 positioning. This kind of goes to what I was originally talking about, but for P2 with our pre-positioning for dispels, but this is a different pull than the one that we just looked at. So you'll see here, we actually have a pretty good melee clump in the front of the boss, but we don't have anyone behind the boss. So we just need to find that happy distribution of melee in front, melee in back. I think what we'll aim to do, like I said, is Demon Hunters, Warrior, and let's do Death Knight behind the boss. Everyone else can be in the front with the tanks. This is another moment where we're taking a fair bit of damage, but we have a slightly different ranged portfolio, right? Kieran doesn't need to be this far out, so but he has a self break. He shouldn't be using it here, but he can. Mako, again, doesn't need to be this far out. You should be in the stack and then be prepared to move out. We don't need to overspawn treants. Where we should actually see treants spawning are from our healers out here, right? When this root goes out, so that they can pre-position for Dispel 1. And we should also see a treant. So again, like this treant, I think comes from Schwab, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, we don't need to spawn those trees. But same thing. So Boa and Cammy should be cheating over this way, kind of where Bidbid is now. Bidbid needs to swap to the other side of the boss because he's far less likely to get Dispel 2. It's still possible, and Codex has Grip Tech if we do have those unfortunate moments, but we should pre-position ourselves for those successful Dispels, and then we would want Mages and Hunters on the side of the boss closer to Dispels 3 and 4. And again, what that looks like kind of in real time here is we're slamming the roots, we're doing AoE damage, Dispels come out, right? The healer one is going to move out of the raid and Dispel. Ideally, Alk should already be out there, so we should be able to start this set sooner, but he got rooted and didn't have a freedom. So that's one. Dispel 2 gets out. We handle that well. If we look, though, at the pathing of Dispel 2, didn't go back far enough. If we look at the pathing of Dispel 2 like runs in and then runs out. They have to dodge this mushroom. But if we're pre-positioned over here, you can just scoot around it. So we can, again, get Dispel 2 rolling sooner. If we're looking at our debuffs, right? Dispel 1 goes out, 2, 1. We could Dispel 2 like a full 2 to 3 seconds earlier before we are. Then Dispel 3 and 4 swapped here. That's okay. And then we had Dispel 4. I believe Dispel 4 was on Kieran, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was on Kieran. And he's stuck in a root. Ideally, he should be in the stack, and that shouldn't be there. Normally, that would be Jonesy, but I think Jonesy was out for this pull. So what this will help us do is get a better U shape, and then we shouldn't have weird seeds spawning as a result of that. We did a good job with seed cleanup here, and we move on. This was one of our better pulls, but we did still lose a couple people right at that 340 moment just to the amount of damage that was going out. Okay. The one other thing, and again, this is just a different pull, same moment. We're breaking down the roots. We're going to start our Dispel set. Our healers were pre-positioned here, which is great. This is a set where we got a really good Dispel ordering, right? Cammy would be number 2. Mako Bidbid would be 3 and 4. These guys can get there. They have movement to get there. They don't need a hustle. They don't have to break their roots. Cammy should receive a freedom, and he should walk over there. But again, one thing, just we don't need to walk in and then walk out. We have the grip tech, but just scoot as soon as you're able. But this ended up being a really good set. The only problem is our Dispel 1 was a little far in. So we needed Dispel 3 to move out to compensate. So one thing that Dispels 3 and 4 should always be looking for is how close is this fire to the boss? If it's very close, you need to take a couple more steps back. Because we need a minimum amount of surface area on the floor so that we can guarantee that weird seeds don't spawn. What you'll see happening here, so this is the set where our flare bombs are going to break. Because this wasn't far out enough, we get a seed over here, right? So we have our array of seeds in here. This seed should have spawned down here if this fire was further back. So now we have to do some like tomfoolery. This costs Healthstone, Health Pot, and Guardian Shield to live, right? But we get it, which is great. But to avoid having to vomit those cooldowns out in that moment, if we just back up a couple of steps, it'll simplify a lot of things. So Dispels 3, like the so what of all of this, Dispels 3 and 4, calibrate your positioning based on where Dispel 1 and 2 happened. They have a lot less control over where they go, Dispel 1 especially. Your healers are pre-positioning, but they're also reliant on freedoms and root breaks from other classes. So they only have so much autonomy. You guys, Dispels 3 and 4, you have all the time in the world to get out there and find your spots. So make sure that you're moving out or in based on how far the fire is on that U shape. Okay? Any questions on P2, guys, before we shift over to P3? White group. Okay, that's P2. Let's talk P3. So P3, and I'm just gonna cannibalize this so that we can keep rolling. So P3, I just want to kind of do a quick recap of how we're moving in P3, right? So as a quick recap, the P3 mechanics order is roots, then firebeam, then seeds, then roots, then dispels, right? So we have a long time before, or sorry, dispels then roots, but we have a long time before dispels. We're in the muscle memory habit of coming out of P2 and immediately having to pre-position for dispels. We are doing way too much movement at the start of P3. So we just broke Supernova. People are scattering to the wind, right? Look at us. Boom. We're all over the place. But the next thing that we have to do is stack in. So the tanks do a good job of moving the boss part of the way. We're not, and Vest called this out, I think, during the pull. We're not going to be able to move the boss as far over because we're not going to break the shield as fast. We just aren't. So the boss is, the first root set is going to kind of be in the middle of the room, and that is what it is. So we are losing a lot of free damage by pre-moving. All we have to do in this moment is just dodge. What that looks like in real time, again, is we're going to break the shield, and then as soon as the shield breaks, you're going to see people start hoofing it. Right? So hoofing it, hoofing it, hoofing it, hoofing it. We don't need to do all this movement. All we have to do is dodge the stuff on the ground and then stack back onto the boss. So we need to calm our fingers down in that moment because we're only going to get the boss a little bit of the way out. Sorry,
Can
Kimmy,
I
go ahead.
explain why some people might be moving out, me
Yeah,
included?
go ahead. Go
Is
ahead.
that those swirls are proximity based on people.
Uh-huh.
And the first few times we entered P3, what would happen instead is that the under the boss would get swarmed with swirlies that would kill people.
Got it.
Um,
Okay.
and so pre-moving out a few ranged means that there's less swirls under the boss, so it's a little easier for melee to keep up time on the
Okay.
boss.
Okay.
That's just my personal reasoning for why
No, it makes sense.
that's
As long as you're not giving up a ton of damage to make it happen, that's fine, right? Because if we also just look at health in this moment, we're still recovering from the supernova, and the falling star actually hits pretty hard. Like if you look at right when the boss finishes the cast, we get topped, the falling star pulses, and then we got a lot of people real low. And so, Gammy, to your point, if pre-moving helps spread those out, that's awesome. I'm happy to keep doing that, but just know that you don't have to like book it to the outside.
right. Yeah.
On this pull, we have pretty minimal, but there were a couple of pulls in here. Like if I just cherry pick one after that supernova, where we are just hoofing it when we don't need to be. Long supernova. We get the extra tick there. But yeah, we do a pretty okay job on this one. This is one of our better ones, but we still don't need to be big scooting and just finding our happy point. Well, it'll come with time, but what that pre-move ends up doing is it ends up creating a similar semicircle to what we just looked at. This is roots about to go out. So if we're going to expect range to pre-move, I need melee to just be behind the boss. Because we end up with a big semicircle and taking a lot of extra root damage on top of stars, on top of the other ticks. We're also about to get a fire dodge. So if melee are able to be on the back and we can have ranged in the front, it'll help group our roots up so that we don't have like odd ducks out. Like I'm right on the boss. I should be in critical mass, but I'm not because critical mass is so far off the boss. So we need to just do a better job, I think, with our root positioning there. And the pre-positioning is kind of leading to some of that. We already talked about the tree breaks. I covered that in another slide. I didn't realize I was going to double hit that, but we shouldn't be spawning any trees on this set. We just don't need to. But we spawned 2 kind of just for no reason. I think it's Jonesy and Tony is the one hiding under there. Don't break your roots unless you have to. Moral of the story. I want to just let our longest P3 poll kind of run here because there are a couple other things going on. So we get seeds. Again, we're used to the P2 mechanic order where seeds happen and we have to stack back in because there's about to be a root. We got dispels coming. So we need ranged pre-positioned out. And we end up here having to waste a ton of time. We have fire near the boss. Like, this should be further out. 2 ends up in a good spot because it has time to react. And then 3 and 4 go. So we just need to get more comfortable with the order of mechanics in P3. Part of that's my job, is to give you guys more early warning. Part of that is just knowing what the order is going to be. Because then we end up with this root set. This root set is really important that we break quickly. And this fire is really important that we're not close to the boss. This Dispel 1 is about where Dispel 1 on the next Dispel set is supposed to be. So if we let it play here, we're going to break these roots, and then we get seeds, and then we immediately get another set of roots. These are the roots that we break under our own power. And then we're going to get another set of dispels. So tanks, we don't want to tuck the boss back into the pocket here. The boss was good where he was. He could even be a little further out, just a little. Because what's about to happen is we need to get Dispel 1, basically where old Dispel 1 is. Dispel 2, right here. We need to get a gateway down under the boss. And Dispel 3 and 4 need to press a personal and gateway out. And then the whole raid is going to dodge to the left off screen. So Dispel 1 and 2 are about to come. We need to break these roots. Dispel 1 and 2 need to catch the same freedoms that were assigned to Dispel 1 and 2 in P2. They need to get out in Dispel, and we're doing an AoE burn. So
just quick question. Is this an okay route to break?
You don't need
3 or 4.
You don't need to. So under the boss, it's hard to see in all this shit. I don't think it was actually down on this pull, but under the boss there should be a gateway going over here. It's to the left.
Under the fire breath bar.
Oh yeah, there it is. I see it. Yeah, ideally it should get. Yeah, it should. If I don't know what the range on it is, but Cammy, for reference, ideally we put it like right near where the old fire trail ends, so that they could get dispelled like right off the end of it. I know that there's a million things going on, and we're seeing this like 5 or 6 times only, but what should happen? What should happen is you should be in the clump. You don't have to break your root. We're DPSing these down. Dispels 1 and 2 are going to happen. They're the ones that need to break. You have time to take get your root broken, take the gate, and now you're already over there. I think what happened there is you took the gate and got hit by a star and died. But if you take it earlier, we should be in that comfy spot. So Dispel 3 and 4 shouldn't have to break there. They should be able to be in the stack, take the gate, call for Dispel. And it's important that we have like mics ready to be queued. You need to your healers are healing through what's one of the hardest damage moments in the fight. So you need to let them know when you're ready. They're not going to necessarily have the mental bandwidth to also look at your exact positioning. So cue your mic and say Dispel 3. And that'll be a big value add. So that's P3 positioning. There's a couple more things to talk through when it comes to P3. Just from a quick recap standpoint, we have our Dispel sets. So this is the set we were just talking about, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Take the gate. Raid dodges out, comes back in. What happens next? We get one more set of roots with flare bombs. We don't need to DPS these roots. They'll be broken by flare bombs. We get another set of seeds, and then we're going to get one last set of roots. This set of roots is our biggest AoE moment of the fight. This is where you should ideally be second potting, using any leftover defensives, anything that's left in your kit to live during this moment, because there's a very high likelihood that we'll have people dead going into this root set, just because there's a lot of stuff that happens in P3. If we have people dead, it's very likely that we won't get the roots broken before swirls. So we need all of our live buttons here that are left. We then dodge away from fire. We get a last set of flare bombs to break roots. We don't have to DPS these roots. We're slamming boss. Boss should die here. Boss should die before these seeds. So we're truly... Yeah, go ahead, Cammy.
If we have like a 1.5 minute CD, should we send it on the second set of roots or the third set?
Damage cooldown?
Yeah, not like it's not like a major damage cooldown, but like a medium damage cooldown. Which one would it be more beneficial for?
I think the second one.
Okay.
Unless you also... I don't know if it... Does it also generate you single target damage?
Not really. I'm thinking.
Then yeah, the second one. Then the second one for sure. So again, last set of we'll have one more set of dispels here. We'll have movement assigned for this moment. I think we have a roar here. I think it's Kez's roar if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to check note. But we're 4 mechanics away from the boss falling over. From where we're at right now. So we've got this is a super hard overlap set. This is where we died every time on Tuesday. So we need to get comfortable with that dispel positioning. A big part of that is getting the first dispels right. So we'll aim to get to and see this as much as we can on Thursday. And a big part of that is going to be just make the other changes from a positioning standpoint and from a live standpoint that we talked about. Speaking of live, let's talk about personals and scary moments. So this is our damage profile, or this is our damage taken profile over the course of the fight. If we ignore people getting hit by fire beams to die at the end, or like bombs going off. This is Supernova 1. This is Supernova 2. But if you look, Supernova 1 does about as much damage as the germinating pops for seeds in the rest of P2. And healers don't have 50% more haste. So these damage moments on the tail end of P2 are really scary. And if we take avoidable damage in this moment, we're going to be extra scared. So you can see the germination ticks right here. This hump is also people getting hit by falling stars. We take a lot of falling star damage here. So cutting down on that avoidable damage, specifically in these bad moments, is going to be a big difference maker. Now, some people were scrambling to get seeds in this moment, and it's not necessarily impossible for us to get 0 avoidable damage without playing perfectly. But what that means is we need to have our defensives and our health stones and health pots rolling in this tight overlap window, right? Because we're taking a ton of damage from Flaming Germination. We take about 1.7 million damage per second as a raid here. And from a healing standpoint, in that same window, actually, let me turn this off. From a healing standpoint, in that same window, we're taking like 1.9 million in healing, which is good. So we're net positive, but that's on the whole raid. The thing to note here is this is when we've been calling for health stones and health pots. And on our best pull, only a fraction of the raid, a little less than half, actually hit health stones and health pots in this window, right? So make sure that you're not holding, unless you're fine, right? Just because we say it, if you're at 100%, you don't need to push it. But if you're at 70%, you should, because what we're trying to do is make sure our healers are paying attention to the people who have nothing, not the people who are sitting on a health pot, but they're at 50% and they're feeling good, right? We're taking a little bit of overhealing from health pots, but if you look, all the overhealing is in the tail end from the new pots. None of it is from the initial presses of Healthstone or Health Pot, which is good. So make sure that we're ripping those in that moment. One thing to note, and this is going to be very biased towards Rogue because Feint is an OP button. These were our effective usages of defensive cooldowns in that 15-second window. So that 15-second high damage taken window, these were our effective damage or mitigation cooldowns over the course of the night. We got there, for context, we got there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 11 times. We got there 11 times. So to have people down here with fewer than like 5 pushes on personals is a little eye-popping. Let's make sure that we're having our personals up for the moments that matter. A big part of why we don't is because we're overstacking on the roots. So if we can fix our root problem, we're not going to have to press personals there, and we'll have them up for the moment that matters. And that'll reduce the random deaths that we've tended to have on this seed set in particular, and push us over the hump into more P3 pulls pretty easily. There's, of course, fire beam deaths and other things that we haven't talked about, but I think I've beaten that horse well enough over the course of the night. Yesterday, so I'm not gonna bring that back here. And I know I provided a zoomed in usage of Healthstone and Health Pot. These are our Healthstone and Health Pot usages over the whole night, regardless of when they were pressed. So if you're on the lower end, make sure you're coming with your health pots and health stones ready to roll, and that you're using them where they're needed. All right. Especially some of our less survivable classes. So just get used to bringing those in. It's a big help to your healers, and it'll help us live some of those spooky moments. That's all I have on live. Before I pivot to damage, does anybody have any questions or comments? Just kind of on any of the topics that we've covered here so far?
Do you want to assign my AG anywhere? I've just been popping it on
Yeah,
supernovas.
We'll get that in the note, Nick.
Okay.
Do you have K's set up? Like, will you get the reminders?
Yeah. I just been
Okay.
throwing it on the supernovas because I just figured it was good there, but it sounds like it's probably not. So
Third
maybe bump it.
supernova, yeah, but we'll get it in the note. We'll take a look at that.
Yeah, I've definitely been slacking on that, but the times where it comes up and where it would be really good is weird because in P2 it's always the seeds, so you're not actually actively hitting the boss.
Right.
So, but that's a good point. I'll definitely. It's the same thing with Nature's Vigil. I haven't really been using Elin's Snap, so
yeah,
for flagging that.
Yeah, we can. That's a good call out, Nick. Third supernova is definitely spicier because we're getting an extra tick, so that's probably a good spot. But we'll take a look at P2 and beyond.
And then the defensive usage for that Harry pot spot in P2. I'm saving mine for when I'm going to pick up seeds because of the way the dispels are happening, I have to run in fire, and when I don't have something, I die.
This covers that window. So this covers
Okay.
This covers when the seeds are up and we're collecting them, and when we're taking ticking root damage. So this is both in that like 15-second tight overlap.
Okay.
Yeah. If you press like a couple seconds at, like if I broaden the window like a little bit, like just add a couple extra seconds in there, like paint a slightly different picture, but not that much. But yeah, this covers that spooky window. Okay. So that's all I had on the live and positioning side. Now let's talk about damage and ignore these parse numbers, where I'm intentionally overinflating certain types of damage here. So first, this is our overall damage for the night. This is just kind of where we're at. Couple of quick notes. One, if we look just at Empowering Flame, over here. Why is that not? Oh. Unfiltered. There we go. You'll notice spread. I think typically Schwab and Nick are landing. Like Nick is usually landing third, and Villain's usually landing third, so their damage is expected to be lower. If we include Overkill Dam, we would again ideally have this bomb up there as the killing blow. And Nick, I know we talked about that on some of the polls, but if we look at just cherry pick one, the difference on including and not including Overkill should be like you guys should be hitting for the same total amount, which means we're still over damaging sets where we have flare bombs, so we need to not do that. So let's talk about damage in the right places, because this is our damage over the course of the night, right? So let's talk about putting damage in the right places. So we want to get damage into Tindral all the time, right? We also want to get damage into any of the treants that spawn. Damage into trees, good damage. Damage into Tindral, great damage. We want to get damage into the roots, but only at certain times. We don't want to get damage into the roots at other times because we have the flare bombs to handle it. This doesn't include the P3 ones because we didn't get there enough for it to be meaningful. But if we look just at the P2 root overlap at 315 to 330, this damage is as good as damage into Tindral or trees. So this is kind of our spread over the course of the night based on that. So if you were someone who was near the top up here and you see yourself plummeting to the bottom for whatever reason, and I'll share this particular query so you can see the weighted and unweighted damage in raid chat here. Make sure that you're putting damage in the right places. We're at the point where damage optimizations in P1 and P2 are going to potentially mean that we get to skip more of P3. That doesn't mean we get to skip the whole phase, of course, but we may be able to shave off a couple of extra percent going into it. Our best pull was this 24% pull, and we ended P2 with the boss at where's just Tindral? With the boss at 47%. So that was our best coming out of P2 percentage. Our target is below 45. So we still have room to improve even on our best pulls in terms of damage coming out of P2. And the way that we can do that is we can focus on our damage and into the right places. If you're someone who's currently doing a ton of AoE damage to roots that don't really matter, make sure that you're putting that damage either into a root set that we need to kill or into the boss. I know some people have funnel capabilities and they're using them. This isn't meant to at you. Don't stop funneling, but do what you need to do to maximize that single target. Unless you're someone who's intentionally AoE spec'd going into P3, so that we can live. Okay. And I think this again includes Empowering Flame.
What is Empowering Flame?
Empowering Flame is the bomb drop.
Bomb.
Yeah. If I take out Empowering Flame, this is the spread.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But again, so the difference there, if we look at the unweighted damage This is our breakdown, right? We have like warlocks and rogues screaming into the front. If we weight that damage, we still have our warlocks and rogues at the front, which means the warlocks and rogues are doing productive damage. But if you see a big shift in your other damage patterns, like if you're someone who was number 3 or 4, like Mako's up here, Villainy and Schwab are up here. If we weight it, we see roughly the same breakdown, which is good. But our people on the lower end had a whole reshuffle go on. So just keep an eye on putting your damage in the right place. We still need to find more single target in P1 and P2. Okay. All right, that's all I got, guys. I know that this was on the longer end of VOD reviews. We're clocking in at about 45 minutes here. Does anyone have any other questions or thoughts before we turn off the recording and go about our days?
Dead chicken.
Hell yeah. We're very close. I mean, we're close. Keep an eye out there for Rock prep coming, likely ahead of Tuesday. Again, more informational. Your focus should very much still be on Tindral, but we're already starting the Farrak breakdown.
For the first set of feathers in P3,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I guess it's the first dive bomb, the first set of roots after the supernova. I'm seeing a lot of inconsistency in feather pickups. Because I usually try to just get a feather, so because I just that's how I'm used to the fight. And so it's like right before this happens in this VOD. But in any case, and so like sometimes I'm like, okay, here's my feather, and then someone else grabs it, and I get nervous, and I just stole a dive bomber's feather, so
Right.
And I can shift wherever I need to be, because like
So yeah,
back here
one of the
I'm
things
usually.
that we talked about is having melee intentionally on the back side of the boss, because again, our roots are like super concentrated over here. If
Mhm.
melee are there and our dive bomb people can get the ones in the middle of the room, that'll leave these feathers open for our people who have need to pre-position for other things.
Yeah.
So ideally, we would get the 3 on the backside. So like,
Okay.
I don't know what the order is. If you guys are getting the same feather as like in your bomb ordering, right? But if it's like
Well,
Villainy,
it's
Turtle, Luke, then we would have 3 over here.
yeah, it's these. So the two. So there's one demon hunter. I don't know who that is, but that one demon hunter there, and then this one over below, like your timers. Not that one. I'm usually it's
here.
that one. Yeah. So it's either that one or the one that the demon hunter's on is the one I'm usually going for. But sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not there.
Yeah.
And like if I'm over on the other side, I can just grab those ones. Like that's fine. It's just
No.
those.
It makes sense to have ranged moving towards where they're eventually going to need to be. I think we should just push our bomb getters to get these feathers.
Okay.
Towards the middle of the room.
Not
But
a
I
very
think that
important
mostly
question.
applies. Oh, go ahead, Bidbid.
Oh, sorry. No, it's. I'm just saying, like, not a very important question. Just want to know how many pulls are we in. I just didn't see that.
Oh, like overall?
290 or
Roughly,
something?
yeah.
We're up there.
Like 300,
It's not 300. It's like 290 or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
But a lot of those don't count. I don't count.
That's 311.
The 10
Yeah,
second.
we're at 311, but some of these are, but the vast majority of these, even into like the last couple of nights, are P1 wipes at like 50 seconds or 10 seconds to fire beams. So we really got to cut those out. we gotta move past that if we're gonna continue to make steady progress.
Do we have a fire beam leaderboard?
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah.
We actually took a lot less fire beams on Thursday. Which was
We
nice.
did. Thursday was a big improvement. We had a couple of moments of regression, right? But if we ignore events after a called wipe, this was our survivability. breakdown over the night. If we look specifically at fire beams,
How does it know when you call a wipe?
I
It's just like when
press a
everybody
keybind
dies.
on my log.
Keybind.
Yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, we had 60 some odd deaths before a called wipe, 2 fire beams on Thursday.
Call them out. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, I mean, the
I'm
survivability
just
here is
kidding.
indicative of what's happening, right? The last thing I'll say, and I didn't have a specific thing set up for this, but we do have a pretty wide range. Where's that debuff? We do have a pretty wide range of people who are collecting seeds. Kieran was only in for 1 pull. He got a seed. Check.
the fuck, Kieran?
100%.
But if you're on the lower end of this, it makes sense for our healers to be down here, right? But if you're below a healer, or if you're below some of your less mobile ranged, and you're a mobile ranged or you're a mobile melee, prioritize getting those seeds. We should have everyone up in the 30 plus range. And
I was
Turtle
gonna
was
ask-
doing some voodoo, but yeah, find those happy points. Sorry, there was a question.
Yeah, I didn't want to be a high maintenance crybaby or anything, but you have
Yeah,
me
yeah.
like on the right side, and it's like very common I get 3 or 4. Like I almost always get 4 on the dispel, and getting to the
Yeah.
other side is like almost impossible.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for mages not to have as many because you're not assigned like a specific
You guys are
spot.
floaters. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Even then, like
I think
floating
it
the
should-
right side's pretty difficult whenever we're like always left side.
got it. Yeah, I
I
think
didn't know if there's like a melee on our side that would want to float right side instead of the mages.
yeah. The same thing that I said to Holy on Thursday I think applies here. The starburst that we have, like these patterns, these are indicative of coverage, right? On the P3 one, I think you're assigned to just the near the boss shit, and we should have people flaring out to get these. So if there's nothing near the boss, it's normal to not have a seed. It's fine to not get a seed on every set, but we should it's a raid activity. We should see everyone with a very similar number of seeds, which we're not far off from right now, but we do have some room to improve.
I don't think we had that many deaths to a tree being spawned, though. Did we?
It was our
in
Well, it
leading
says
cause of
that-
P3s.
In P3, roughly half of our P3 wipes were to seeds.
Oh shit.
Yeah. So again, for context, in P3, this is like our first pattern of where people should be. So healers are out here because they need to be out here for dispels shortly after these. We have, again, people who are very likely to get those weird dispel sets out here. I think Cammy's the odd duck. I think, Cammy, we could potentially swap you with Villainy on this set so that you can more easily pre-position for Dispel 2.
Yeah, I fucked up. There's like one wipe where I definitely like could have gotten the seed, and I was too close to my dispel spot, and I didn't make it to my seed.
Yeah, I think we could definitely make that flip, but ideally we would have the people who are able to get the inside ones be primarily melee in our mobile ranged.
Yeah, like fuck Komako in this particular situation, I guess.
This is another fuck Kamako one. So
I just stand in the middle, and like if someone starts pinging a feed, like oh shit, get this, I'll blink and go get it. Like I don't try to run into one until then. I'm the like backup. Oh shit.
Exactly, which is perfect.
Is
You're
there,
doing what you should be doing. Go ahead.
There's definitely not a minute and a half between this seed set and the third seed set, right?
I
like
don't
a minute?
think so. I think
Just because, like,
well,
wondering about gatewaying to the dispel spot. But...
no, because this gateway for Dispel 3-4, which you could get, is at 550. That seed set, that first seed set is at 5 minutes. Yeah. So, part of the fun. Okay. All right, guys. I'm gonna get back out there. I don't want to go above an hour here, but